Somewhere in a quiet laboratory in Budapest, a small team of engineers may have just solved the one problem that has haunted electric vehicles since the very first one rolled off a production line. It is not a new motor, not a new design, and not some flashy gadget you can see from the outside. It is something buried so deep inside every battery cell that most drivers will never even know it exists. By the end of this video, you will understand why some of the world's biggest car manufacturers are already paying close attention to this quiet Hungarian breakthrough. Before we go any further, if you care about the future of electric vehicles, battery technology, and the kind of breakthroughs that could change how we drive, hit that subscribe button right now. New videos on emerging EV and energy technology come out regularly on this channel, and you will not want to miss what comes next. This particular story has the potential to affect pricing, driving range, and charging speed for millions of vehicles around the world. So stay with us, because the details ahead are more surprising than they first appear. Hungary has quietly become one of the most important countries in the global electric vehicle supply chain. Major battery manufacturers from South Korea and China have poured billions into factories across the country, turning towns most people have never heard of into industrial powerhouses. Companies have built massive plants to produce battery cells for some of the world's largest automakers. But the real twist in this story is not coming from one of those giant corporations at all. It is coming from a small startup called Edortech, working out of a laboratory in Budapest. For years, this company's engineers have been quietly testing a completely different approach to how batteries are built. Most lithium-ion batteries used in cars today rely on a material called graphite inside one of their two main electrodes, known as the anode. Graphite has done the job reasonably well for decades, but it comes with real limits on capacity, charging speed, and manufacturing cost. Edortech's team believed there had to be a better way, and they set out to prove it. For years, public conversation around electric vehicles has circled around three persistent complaints from drivers everywhere. People worry about how far their car can travel on a single charge. They worry about how long it takes to recharge. And increasingly, they worry about the price tag. According to industry voices who follow this space closely, price has actually become the biggest sticking point of all, even bigger than range or charging speed. That is strange when you think about it, because battery costs have fallen significantly over the past several years. Building an electric vehicle has, in many ways, become simpler than building a traditional gasoline car. Yet sticker prices for many EV models have remained stubbornly high for average buyers. This is exactly the gap that Edortech's new technology is aiming to close. The innovation is called ONLi, and it focuses entirely on the anode, one of the two electrodes inside every lithium-ion battery cell. Instead of using graphite, ONLi replaces it with a thin metal alloy layer that is formed directly onto a copper surface. The company's chief technology officer has described the process as a complete reimagining of how the anode itself gets made. Rather than relying on the traditional coating methods the industry has used for years, this approach builds the material in a single integrated step. That single-step process is a big part of what makes this technology interesting to manufacturers. Conventional graphite anodes require complex, expensive coating procedures that add real cost to every battery cell produced. Edortech's method skips much of that complexity by forming the metal bonding directly onto the copper during production. Fewer steps generally mean lower costs, faster manufacturing, and fewer opportunities for defects to creep in. Now let's talk about the numbers, because this is where the story gets genuinely exciting. According to the company, replacing a standard battery cell's graphite anode with their ONLi alternative could lead to a 60 to 80% increase in capacity. For an electric vehicle, that kind of jump could translate directly into significantly longer driving range from the same physical battery pack. It could also mean faster charging times, since the improved material structure handles lithium ions more efficiently than graphite does. Every electric vehicle contains thousands of individual battery cells working together inside its pack. That means even a small improvement at the level of a single cell can multiply into a major difference once you scale it up across an entire vehicle. A 60 to 80% capacity gain multiplied across thousands of cells is not a minor footnote. It is the kind of number that gets entire engineering departments at major automakers to sit up and pay attention. Cost is where the story becomes even more compelling. Edortech claims that their manufacturing process is dramatically cheaper than the complex coating procedures graphite anodes typically require. The company has suggested their production costs run at a small fraction of what traditional graphite coating demands. If that claim holds up at scale, it could directly attack the pricing problem that has frustrated EV buyers for years. Here is something important to understand about Edortech's business strategy. The company is not trying to build complete battery cells or compete directly with the giant manufacturers already dominating the industry. Instead, their plan is to supply anodes to existing battery producers who already have manufacturing infrastructure in place. This approach lets them slot their technology into current production lines, rather than asking the entire industry to start over from scratch. That compatibility with existing factories is a crucial detail many people overlook. Asking automakers to completely rebuild their battery production from the ground up would be enormously expensive and slow. By designing ONLi to work within current manufacturing setups, Edortech removes one of the biggest barriers that new battery technologies usually face. This is likely a major reason why several major car manufacturers are reportedly already in discussions with the company. The identities of those automakers have not been publicly confirmed, and Edortech has chosen to keep those conversations private for now. Still, the fact that serious interest exists from established players in the auto industry says a great deal about how promising this technology looks on paper. Big manufacturers do not typically open talks with small battery startups unless something genuinely catches their attention. That alone should tell you this is a story worth watching closely. Of course, no breakthrough technology arrives without its share of challenges, and ONLi is no exception. The technology remains firmly in development, and commercial deployment is currently targeted for around 2028. That timeline means proving the process works reliably outside a controlled laboratory environment, at industrial scale, under real manufacturing conditions. Scaling any new material science breakthrough from a small lab setup into mass production is historically one of the hardest steps in the entire process. History is full of promising battery technologies that performed beautifully in small test batches, but struggled once manufacturers tried to produce them at industrial volume. Cost projections can shift, durability questions can emerge, and supply chains for new materials sometimes take years to mature properly. None of this means ONLi will fail to reach the market, but it does mean some healthy skepticism is reasonable here. The next few years of testing and pilot production will tell us a great deal about whether this technology lives up to its early promise. This development arrives at a moment when Hungary's role in the global EV industry is already expanding rapidly. International battery giants and major automakers have established significant manufacturing operations across the country in recent years. That existing industrial base gives a homegrown innovation like ONLi a potential advantage, since the surrounding ecosystem of suppliers and expertise is already in place nearby. A breakthrough discovered in Budapest does not have to travel far to find partners capable of testing and eventually scaling it. If ONLi or something like it eventually succeeds at industrial scale, the ripple effects could reach far beyond Hungary's borders. Cheaper, higher capacity batteries would put real pressure on every major automaker to reconsider their own battery sourcing strategies. Consumers could eventually see electric vehicles with longer range, faster charging, and lower prices arriving sooner than current industry roadmaps suggest. And it would be a powerful reminder that the next major leap in EV technology does not always come from the companies you would expect. So here is what we will be watching closely over the coming months. Any announcement of a pilot partnership with a named automaker would be the first real signal that this technology is moving beyond promising lab results. Independent testing results, if and when they become public, will matter enormously for separating genuine breakthrough from clever marketing. and the broader trend of smaller specialized startups challenging entrenched battery giants is one worth following regardless of how this particular story unfolds. What we have here is a small team in Budapest working on a part of the battery that almost nobody ever sees or thinks about. Yet that invisible component, the anode, may end up playing an outsized role in solving the range, charging, and price problems that have followed electric vehicles for years. Whether Edortech becomes a household name or simply influences how bigger companies build their own anodes, the underlying idea is already shaping conversations inside major automotive research departments. Sometimes the biggest changes in an entire industry start in the smallest, quietest corners of it. That brings us to the end of today's deep dive into this quiet Hungarian battery breakthrough. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next development in this space. Drop a comment below and let us know whether you think small startups like Edortech can actually compete with the battery giants, or whether big manufacturers will simply absorb the best ideas for themselves. Thank you for watching all the way through, and we will see you in the next video. Share.